Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey everybody! Good morning.
Good Monday from
Happy
snowy
Monday.
Utah.
Yeah, it's like amazing. It's already Monday again.
Yeah, how'd that happen?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm back.
Weren't we supposed to have 2 days over the weekend?
I think that we were. Yeah, and I think we did, but I think that we were just like so busy with other stuff. So.
I suppose, yeah. So yeah, back here with y'all. We got some important stuff to talk about. You want to get the announcements covered?
Well, big one is on March 21st. So that's coming up in just a few weeks. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is our White Hat Way webinar for March. We'll be doing another one in May, so every other month. And the March webinar is on retaining and motivating talented team members.
Okay.
And so that's going to be it's going to be a great.
They'll probably learn something about attracting.
They'll probably learn well, and that's
membership.
the funny thing, because as I've talked to some of the people that are going to be on the panel, that they're as I've talked about attracting people, it's like we have people that come into our business and that aren't members, that aren't team members, and they're like, I want to work here.
Yeah,
I want to work here.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's
But
a really great.
These folks that are coming as our panelists have pretty stable teams.
So that have been there
turnover.
for 5, 10, 12 years. So far we have confirmed the dealer and GM from Sorensen Auto Plaza. And they're
in Iowa.
They're in Iowa, and just really enjoyed talking to the GM about how their dealer has really set the stage for some just really great team culture. And then we have another person, Crystal Agayo from ScopeX Pros, has said that she'll come and join us too. She's got a very, prior to ScopeX Pros, she worked for Tricolor and was one of their top people in the collections and BDC or BDC departments. So she's going to be joining us, and I'm waiting on one other business person, not a dealer, but a business person, because this is really a subject that's about things. It goes beyond a dealership. It's about how do you attract, retain, engage really good, talented team members and keep them sticky. Sure. So again, March 21st, that is a Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And, we're really looking forward to having y'all there. You can go to Eventbrite and pick up tickets. We still do have a couple left of the $19 for the ticket. And then after that, those last couple have been purchased. Then we'll be jumping to the regular price of $49.99. So get in there. And then another... Go ahead.
Oh, the rest of this week, just back to this week, we've got Wednesday, we got Allison Harrison, the attorney out of Ohio, is going to come and talk to us about triggering terms, which is all part of the thing that we need to be aware of the Buy Here, Pay Here space. Not new, but she's going to come and talk to us about how to stay out of trouble on the truth in advertising part, and especially in the finance sector. And then on Friday, we're going to do the recap. We had said Friday I would continue into today, but I decided to give it more time to pull together numbers from the month of February. Yeah. So we'll do a recap of the month of February on our Friday episode.
And then just so y'all know, those of you who are on the fence about going to Buy Here, Pay Here United or the NEO User Summit, we're going to be there. We're going to be at the NEO User Summit. So because we are users of NEO through a lot of our clients are, and so we're going to be there to learn some of the new things. I wish that we had gone last year, because after hearing about feedback about, hey, this is all the new stuff, and really kind of getting an in-depth look at how to use and the new stuff that's coming out. So we will be there this year for the NEO Summit. The Buy Here, Pay Here United conference starts that evening. And so it's that's from Tuesday to Thursday, the 23rd through the 25th. So we really encourage you to attend conferences that are like highly educational, and this NEO Summit I know will be for anyone that's doing that. And then the Buy Here, Pay Here United conference, we've looked at the people that are speaking and some of the stuff, and there's some really going to be some great topics. So if you're going to go and you're already planning on doing Buy Here Pay Here United, and you're either already NEO or thinking about it, because the NEO Summit's free. So come and participate. We're going to be there most of the week, meeting with our CEO and other people and doing some planning meeting, because he lives in Vegas, doing some planning for White Hat Way for the next year, and super excited about that.
Sure.
That's going to be really, really
We
cool
also
and fun.
did not mention, just quickly, we got on March 20th, we got the tribute, our tip of the hat to Rick Reeves.
And that's on that's Monday.
Wednesday the 20th.
Oh, that's in March, because it's not in April. Yes, Wednesday the 20th. And that, we've been talking about that for a few months, and it's coming together for the 20th. And so those of you who are familiar with Rick Reeves, tune in. Yeah. It's because...
Yeah, and even if you're not, I think this is something that we chose to give him a tip of the hat, because it had a significant impact on this industry, and not all of us recognize it, but we recognize some of the people that'll be there.
Well, and me being the outsider, and Jim and I are talking about stuff, and he's saying, I'm asking questions about what he learned when he worked with Rick, and that's kind of where he got his consulting start, and just it's a beautiful weaving in of Jim's White Hat Way and his philosophy, which has been all along. And it was just it just seemed to work really beautifully in helping articulate some of those things.
Let's just say I have a heightened awareness about how much of what I teach in White Hat Way has come from some of the foundational and fundamental things that came out of the Rick Reeves education.
And there's big names that are from Rick Reeves, Gordy Tremolin, and Tommy Brandis, and others.
Nearson will be there. Mike Dewey out of Iowa is planning to be there. So I hope it works out for you to be there with us on March 20th.
Yeah. So March 20th for the morning show. So
we're 7.5 minutes in. It's time.
I know we've had a lot of announcements, but they're important things. And again, we were going to be doing a continuation from Friday on the February numbers, and we're still getting some numbers in. And so Jim wanted to have a couple more days to really pull the rest of that together. And so he brought something. He's like, what do you think if we did this on static pools? And I'm like, what's this? Yeah.
What is
new to Buy Here Pay Here? What's a static pool in Buy Here Pay Here look like? What is it about? And so, he's been working on those, and so we've got some really great visuals too. So those of you who are listening on any of the syndicated podcast stations, please, if you want to look at the visuals, go to YouTube, to our YouTube station. So should we?
Let's jump in.
All right. Do you want me to bring this
not
up?
yet. Let's explain to our listeners kind of what a static pool is. So static pool is something I've heard about since I got in the industry. I think when you think about a static pool study, there's all kinds of things you could study. It's really only limited on the data points that you have available. The primary reason to study static pools in our industry is to go back and look at loss rates. Okay. And it's when you say a static pool, generally what you're referring to is a pool of contracts that have made it to maturity. So that entire pool is now fully
completed.
So it's gonna either get charged off, it's paid off, and so now you can go back and examine that, and you can slice and dice that again any which way you want. Most people are just looking at by year. You could look, if you had a management change, you might want to say, what does our static pool look like from before
the
here,
year before,
after here,
and the year after? Yeah.
It's just one of the challenges with static pools is that it's a little like I shared to Michelle, the same way it was explained to me way back in the beginning. It's like getting your report card. And by the time you get the report card, it's like if the grade's not good, it's too late. You're already in trouble with mom, right? So
true.
So it's like you've already. So it's that's the thing about a static pool. It's sort of reactive. Yes, it's possible to measure static pools and project and kind of see how each pool is performing, but mostly that is most valid once the thing is completed. The entire portfolio is completed. But you can see if you had a software change, if you had a change in your collection practices, if you change your underwriting, either tools or process.
One of the challenges is I know, like, when you're trying to make shifts in your business because you want to improve, you want to tighten, all of those kind of things, it's really easy to like change 7 things that year. Well, it makes it a little bit more difficult to be able to identify the things. And so you also, when you go static pool, it's like, what are the things that changed that year? And it's going to be, these are all of the things, without really being able to have a super, super clear idea, unless you take the tortoise approach, which is something that Jim and I do. It's like, so give something a year, see how it changes, add something new. That is a real tortoise approach, but it's it would help you to be able to very much more easily identify what the change, why.
Yeah, and I will preface, we brought actual data from a dealer, and it's one of our clients that we're going to do a study on anyway, and so just let them, let you see the numbers without knowing who the client is, then we can share kind of what this is. You can go ahead and show that first screen there. It's and this is just the data. It'd be difficult to read, but I just kind of wanted people to see the source data, that kind of the table that I'm working from.
2018, 19, 20, and 21 with one dealer.
And we chose that. This dealer's actually been in business for more than 15 years, but this particular, in this particular software, they didn't start it till like 2017. So the data is partial, right? You only have certain segments. And so I don't have any of the history prior in the old software. So this is just a measurement, and really what I set out to study here, and you can see, if you can read that first row, it's for those who are not, who are catching this on audio later. It's basically, first row is February 2018. The second row is all of 2018. And we're looking at this both in terms of number of accounts and dollars.
Why did you choose February?
Okay, so that was because we've heard over the years that February tends to be the worst book of business that we do, right? And so here I am about to do this study on our sales results from February. And I thought, sometimes what happens is in February, everybody gets busy. It's sell. It's sometimes shortcut the underwriting, and customers got a nice down payment. Let's do business. And so you hurry. And so I've always heard anecdotally, at least, that the book of business that we do in February is some of the worst performing business that we do.
Okay.
Well, I'll let you guys see the slides for yourselves. One quick thing I'll point out there, that so you've just got those 4 years, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Yes, a lot of this spans the COVID period, but I think you're still just measuring all the way to, completion on these things. And so I would point out that last bundle right there, they still have 30 active contracts out of only 90 contracts that originate, or 98 rather, that were originated in 2021. So it's a pretty small pool. I don't think we can really learn a lot from that.
Not yet.
You can also see, if you just study that, their volume has actually been down year over year.
It's a lot bigger this year. I mean, it's
a lot of things going on
closer
with them
to what they had in 2018 this year, isn't it?
But let's focus on just the study itself. If you want to go to that next slide, this is just February each year, and you can see that the loss rates based on number of accounts
it was pretty high in
February of 2018 was awful. I mean, 7 out of 10 customers that they financed charged off just by count. 7 out of 10 charged off.
Straight numbers.
Yeah.
And
then you could see in 2019, 2020, that those numbers were down to more like what you'd expect. People talk about all the time, what's a charge-off rate? If they're stepping into the business, what kind of charge-off rate? Or even just anecdotally, you talk to somebody at a cocktail thing and they find out you're in that business, and they kind of ask you, so what kind of loss rates? Well, based on what? So this is very real, specific, all the way to maturity, static pool. In 2019, in February, that dealer experienced 36.8% charge-off based on number of accounts.
This is interesting. And I'm looking at this based on what I've learned from, meetings and Jim. To have 30 accounts still active that were originated February 2021 is longer contracts. I mean, that's the chance is the chance of them trading up or completing the contract a lot higher when you get to that point where they're 24, they're more than 24, they're over 48.
This is approaching 3 years,
months,
right? This is now more than 3 years. I just did this study through the month of February. So you're talking about contracts that are more than 3 years.
So it's over 36 months in term. And it's interesting because some of the things that we've seen anecdotally is that, that if you're going to have a charge off because the customer is just intending to charge off, that'll happen within the first, 12 to 18 months. They're gone. And so people that are still in at this point are committed to their loan.
Yes, something could still go wrong, of course, and they could, we don't know the outcome. That's the point. So we just go off the data that we have, and what we have is that so far that pool from 2021 is actually performing worse. Now there's still some accounts to be resolved. Those could if those all paid off, that would move the number, somewhat, and they probably will. We just recently, I referenced a few weeks ago a charge-off study that we did with this same dealer, and we studied throughout their history about 400 charge-offs, or the last 400 charge-offs that they'd experienced. And I can tell you from memory that they came out right at 13 months of average. The average charge-off occurred right at about 13 months, which is another thing we can study going forward with this kind of stuff is the timing, because it's not just the charge-offs, it's the financial impact of those charge-offs. So that's a separate thing. I think for today, I just want to keep it simple and just look at pools based on, just
it would be interesting to me to find out what changed between 2018 and 2019, because it's half as much as they had.
I have
before.
my suspicions, but as a good analyst, I don't.
We'd have to have the dealer on here and kind of have a chat with them too. So next one is charge off by dollars.
So again, 2019 is dramatically different than the rest, but this is,
this is interesting to me, because even though it's up this year so far, the amount
in 2021
is much lower.
Well, and it's again because you only have 30 active accounts, but most of those others have paid down, right? There were 98 sales in 2021. So these 30 that are still active, you got 68 that have already resolved, which means they've mostly paid across 3 years. So based on dollars, if they did charge off every one of those 30 accounts that are remaining, those balances are going to be low. So that number probably is better in 2021. So obviously, if I'm the dealer looking at this, you can see the charge-off rate is definitely improving, at least based on dollars. They would call this, based on dollars, I think is called severity. So it's severity of the charge-offs.
So I have a question for you though, because I'm looking at the slide before. It was 36 down to 31, which is, it's about a 5% difference. And this is actually about a 5% difference too, the amount charged off.
So a lot of stuff, but see, those numbers don't have to necessarily correlate, because it could be timing of charge-off. Because keep in mind, when you're looking at dollars, you could have the same number of charge-offs happen, but if they happened earlier in the loans, then the dollars would be higher.
But what I'm saying is it's about the same spread. So you'd think what I would assume from that is that the charge-off happened about the same amount of time. About the same,
that assumes too, though, that the contract length was similar,
That's
that
true.
they didn't change their model in terms of the term of the loan. So we just got to let the numbers tell us what they tell us and not try to speculate and extrapolate. So again, these are all the way to maturity. So, all those bars, the 3 bars that you see on the left, all of those accounts are fully matured. Those are real numbers. And so this is based on gross charge-off, by the way. I didn't say that, but this is based on the gross charge-off principal that occurred, which is really what we want to look at. You could come back in and look at net, look at recoveries. But I think really when you're looking at static pool, you're really just trying to figure out how much of the money did we put in the bank, right? It's really what a static pool is over time. But again, back to the report card analogy, you can see that by the time the dealer sees this bar graph for 2018, it's like that book of business is done. There's nothing we can do to fix that. So it's probably better. This is why you hear me talk more about conversion rates. Part of that's because we work with a lot of dealers who are newer in the business. So we're looking at their numbers earlier, projecting their current travel rate. What I mean by travel rate is it's the rate that they're projected to achieve. So that we do that in sales, we do that in portfolio projections. So that's more like a midterm sort of report card. Let's kind of track our midterm. Let's see how we're doing. And we got a chance to make corrections and improve our report card by the end of the semester.
So what this is saying, though, this is from the gross amount, the total, that 20% of what they should have been able to put in the bank was written off.
Yeah, so it's 20% of origination. So this is just tracking
not interest,
principal.
Just principal.
Right,
okay.
It's just principal. So it's just calculating what percentage of principal did we manage to get in the bank, or that paid, and then so this is gross charge-offs. Again, you either collected it or you charged it off, essentially.
Yeah.
So you could have traded the customer and maybe it didn't go in the bank, but bottom line is it did not charge off. So that's all we're studying here. So this is, again, charge off by severity. So you can go to this last one. We'll need to study this one a little more carefully. So I kind of tried to group them by colors. So you can see over there in 2018, those two blue bars are both 2018. So the dark blue, solid blue is February. And then the one that's got the kind of the pattern to it is
by the year,
all of 2018. So you can see that February, in that particular case, February did perform worse, right? Certainly dramatically worse. But if you look at the others, from 2019 and 2020, just
I'll tell you what I find interesting about that is that most dealers will say your worst month for charge-offs will be the book of what you originate during tax season.
I've told them that's what I've always heard.
Yeah. And so what this kind of shows is, like, at least with this dealer, that's not been the case.
Right.
That they've done pretty darn well during tax season with how strong, how sticky their contracts are.
And I can tell you that their charge-off study that we did of those last 400 charge-offs showed that those accounts with more down payment did perform better.
Interesting.
Which is generally what we hear about tax refund season. We know tax refund customers got a bigger down payment.
Okay.
And so
and this dealer too, when we've suggested the idea that down payment does not necessarily mean
that's
success
what industry
of the
experts
loan.
are telling us, right? That's what industry experts are telling us.
Experts are telling us that, and what we're and we're not saying to throw that completely out, but this dealer is showing that wasn't true.
And I'm just saying, you've heard me say, when we talk numbers, let's don't guess. Let's don't talk anecdotally. Let's go to the numbers, and that's why I want folks to see these are real numbers from a real dealer. And in this particular dealer's case, at least since 2019. And we will obviously build on this as the dealer, matures these other portfolios. But in 2019, 2020, those loans that they booked in February, which we could go back and study, I'm sure they had a larger down payment on a percentage basis or on a pure dollar basis.
Well, at least they've said that they did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's typical. It's going to be typical, right? It's tax refund season, but we can go back and study that. I'm simply saying that business that we did in February for this dealer, they did perform better. In the February deals did perform better. So that's just, it's just math. And so I think this is where we have to, and this is where I've been challenging our entire industry. And I'm going to go first. I'm just going to say, look, I'm going to try to quit talking about numbers in a speculative or conversational way. I'm just challenging everybody. When we talk numbers, let's put the real numbers out there, and let's not just talk about what could work, what should work, what my buddy, used to do. It's like when it comes to this kind of stuff, there are some of these things that, the mathematics matters. Now, today it's just one dealer. Doesn't mean your business model will be the same. Doesn't mean I have to lean in the microphone and say results may vary. It's like your results.
Well, just like business models vary,
right? Sure,
drastically. Yeah.
So exactly how you do business, but for anybody to make a judgment and to say it's to just basically all they can say today is somebody has told me that my book of business in February will be my worst performing. Well, now you can say, well, Jim and Michelle showed me there was one dealer that was not the case.
But it just makes me wonder. This is being speculative or something. The whole idea of if they can fog a mirror at tax time, they've got a car.
Yeah.
And are they the rest of the year actually have more stringent underwriting? Is an interesting thing to look at, and that's an individual dealer's thing to look at. And so talk to me about why it is a good idea to be tracking things like this.
Well, it's that old management thing about you can't manage what you can't measure. And so, you can be guessing, and you can be like you're talking about the, fogging the mirror approach or some adjustments in underwriting. This is why we see such promise around some of these new underwriting tools that are out there, because when you've got consistency in the decision making, and look, you can have the tool and still be inconsistent. If you're not going to use the tool and be consistent, then and by the way, this will be an interesting case study going forward, because this dealer is using the newest, kind of the state of the art or the industry leading.
They're now none of this none of these is from they use Neo, I think that, and so the underwriting that they use, and so it'll be interesting to watch that. George is like, yes, the graph runs counter to the opinion that down payment does not matter, but for this dealer, and so it'll be interesting to start to, it would be interesting for us to do a study. It's like, what are the numbers showing? And
we are doing studies. It's just that they're, our pool of data is smaller, and it's a little bit disjointed. I always talk about, we have a pool of data that runs this length for this dealer and this length for this dealer. And then we don't have, large pools of data that cover the entire thing. So this is why it's kind of problematic, but we're just, whatever data we do bring, we want to be as specific as possible. And we're just going to challenge everybody else to do the same thing. We ask you to challenge the people that are advising you based on certain things. Just have them show you the numbers. And we're just challenging everybody to do that and be transparent with the data so that people can make judgments for themselves. I just think this is kind of in the categories of former dealer myself. I feel like sometimes dealers don't get enough credit for their level of intelligence. I'm just going to say it. Like, I think they sometimes are sort of discounted in their level of intelligence, ability to interpret this kind of thing. I think you just put the numbers in front of them, let them decide. It's like, this is kind of the piece for me that is something that I just feel like you got to put the stuff out there and let people know and let them make their own judgment. They may see this and it may not affect their business model at all. But when you have real, raw information, then that's got to help people know how they want to proceed.
And that it's an interesting thing to look at too, from my perspective, because it's a belief that's like we've been talking about recently, that down payment doesn't matter. And that February is your worst month for charge-offs. And so there's actually two things here that I'm like, it's calling into question, kind of both of those things, is that, because I know when we talked to that dealer about, hey, down payment doesn't matter, that both the general manager and the dealer kind of looked at us like, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
And from their experience, that would be true. That it's like their experience is that that's not true necessarily.
And they were going primarily on anecdotal. They were going based on memory primarily, but you got to get inside the data. But the data did support their position. And it's like, I think for me, you look at the whole thing and you just say, in reality, when we have this kind of information, you can better make a judgment. It's 2024, folks. We don't have to be guessing. We don't have to be guessing. That's the
point. Yeah. That's absolutely the point, is that you hear someone says, well, this is the thing. And then everyone starts listening to the thing. And it's like, oh, well, then I need to do, and that's not necessarily the case.
It's entirely too much money to put at risk without some basis for, some bumpers when it comes to underwriting. And so, we'll have a chance to talk more about underwriting in the coming weeks here. But
let's keep in mind though, that was prior to when they brought in Neo. And so it'll be really interesting to watch this dealer, their book of business since starting Neo, and how those numbers may or may not change, because they may be underwriting differently and have a high down payment.
They will be an important ongoing case study for us, because I can tell you this particular dealer is leaning on the technology. They are doing a good job of not using their own, what would you call it? Their own personal preferences. They're just relying on the technology. They're trusting the technology based on the scoring model. But really, if you don't follow the scoring model, you can never really learn whether it works. So it's like so they're leaning on it. And so time will tell whether or not it really, produces the results that we expect. But this is part of the point. It's like, you've got good technology out there. There's good opportunities to learn. And it's, when you compare, look at any one of those graphs and go back and shave the charge-off rate by 5%. Are you sure you can't afford underwriting software? It's like, it's like underwriting software to me is like the technology is so valuable in this. I'm going to stop myself. I'm going to quit saying in this day and age. It makes me feel 100 years old.
It does kind of. So I do know that, do you know, because they used other underwriting software before they switched to Neo. Did that start in 2019?
Did what start?
The other underwriting
don't know.
software. Okay, that
I
would be
don't
an
recall.
interesting thing to find out whether or not that was no underwriting software,
Right.
and
Exactly.
underwriting software, because that that could make a big
Underwriting
difference. So
software
we'll see if
2.0.
we can get more information for y'all that we could release and give you a little bit.
But even if you knew that, you'd have
defined
to know
look
how
at
they
it.
were applying it. You
That-
don't know what
true.
underwriting bumpers they set
Mhm.
inside that system. But if they didn't have any at all prior to that and have something to
That's
go on,
true.
that's one thing. But anyway, I think we could wrap up there.
Alrighty.
Again, join us back here on Wednesday with Allison Harrison. The attorney's going to talk to us about truth in advertising and keep us out of trouble with making mistakes on ads out there. So that'll be an important
We all
conversation.
could really use that, because they're
Yep.
going to start cracking down.
Yep.
And so we just need to be super careful. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you on Wednesday.
Keep after it. See you then.
Bye.